I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We are terrific.
We are winding down another one of these epics tonight, and just before we get started here, Dan Beaver is the penultimate fantasy racing guru writer for NASCAR.com and YahooSports.com, and we've been privileged to have him with us most of the year this year, and we'll see if it works out again next year. Hopefully it will. Dan, going to Homestead Miami Speedway, it looks like the championship's pretty well locked up. Keselowski's probably going to be cruising a little bit. Does that change anything as far as your, who you suggest people pick and who you might pick for the last race? And this has got to be a big race for fantasy players, right? Last race of the year.
It's a good time to, you know what you got to do when you get to this race. So you either have to roll the dice and take some risks, and if they don't play out, who cares?
Yeah, right.
No one's around to say much to you after it's over. But if you roll those dice and it does work for you, then you got a chance to win your league. You've got the bragging rights, and you've got all off season to feel good about that. So, yeah, this is a good race for that.
Before we get to specific picks, I want to ask you a question about it as far as strategy goes. I know it's different from game to game because all these games are different, but how far out of the lead or how far out of the money or how far out of whatever place you're trying to get to do you have to be before you really, just throw it out there and go for the Hail Mary?
Well, for me, that would have happened around Daytona.
Well, I played that way all year. I know.
I've always been a risk taker, and it shows in my results sometimes. But if you don't take those kinds of risks, and you do the same stuff that everybody else does, it's kind of hard to make up ground. And you're right; it depends on exactly how far down you are and which game it is. For last week, I was poised to make up some major ground on the other experts in the Yahoo Fantasy League until the last lap or the next to last lap.
I could just imagine. Yeah.
There were 20 guys on the lead lap. 3 of the guys who crashed were on my team. I don't know what the odds are there, but it can't be good.
No.
So you can make up 100, 150 points in the Yahoo game if you have the kind of situation that we had last week where Martin Truex Jr. went out early, Jimmy Johnson slapped the wall. You could make up some great points there. But if you had Jimmy Johnson, you didn't lose much because everybody else had him, but you can't gain anything either.
Right.
So this is why you have to roll those dice sometimes, and you've got to have a driver that not everyone is all that hot on, which was Jeff Gordon last week. And that was going to be a great pick until he went insane.
You said it, I didn't, Dan.
I don't have favorite drivers, but the ones that impact my fantasy team stick with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would think that this week is probably the consensus pick, the one everybody's going to have if they have him left, is going to be Jimmy Johnson, probably?
I don't think so. No. He's not mine anyway.
Okay.
I have 3 distinct favorites, and they are not drivers that I think most people would normally. They're not the ones that you think of right off. But to back up one moment, I'm not sure that the championship is locked up. Jimmy Johnson has never really had to run well on this track before, except when he was trying to chase down Denny Hamlin 2 years ago. And in that race, he finished second. He can pick up he can run well when he has to. And meanwhile, Keselowski has avoided trouble all year long, but he comes into Homestead with, I think, a career best finish of 13th. Yes, he needs to finish only 15th or better to beat Johnson if Johnson leads the most laps and wins the race. But finishing 15th is not a guarantee, and it's less of a guarantee if those guys get out of their rhythm and try to points race. Keselowski doesn't know how to do that. If he tries to do that, chances are he could finish 20th or somewhere down in the 20s or lose a lap. And if Johnson has the kind of day he had back in 2010, we've got a points battle again. So I'm not 100% sure that it's a done deal. I think Johnson's probably a good pick, but he's not necessarily my favorite also.
So who would be your favorite?
You might want to be ready to go to commercial just because you guys might be laughing a little bit too hard.
No, it's going to be Jeff Gordon, right? No, that's actually who I thought it would be, but go ahead.
Carl Edwards has 2 victories in the last 4 races, finished second last year. Mm-hmm. And one thing that makes him so attractive this week is he's flying completely under the radar screen. Yeah. Has not been strong all year, has not been particularly strong during the chase. But the last time we came to a track, and I said that it was going to be a favorite, I believe was Dover. I don't know if we were on this, but if I was on with you guys that week. And he finished 5th. He needed help from that caution flag that flew at just the right time to strand many drivers off the lead lap. And he was on the lead lap and had that good track position for the rest of the race. He might need another scenario that's somewhat similar, but I think he's good for a top 5. And if Keselowski, Johnson, and some of the other guys start to pay too much attention to one another, he could sneak in there and get the victory. So I'm going with Edwards.
Well, one good thing, Dan, is that at least as far as we know, neither Jimmy Johnson nor Brad Keselowski will be able to listen to the ESPN feed where they will do nothing but talk about those 2 guys and nobody else. So they won't have to listen to that at least. So they won't have to listen to their own press clippings as the race goes on.
That's true. And until Johnson hit the wall, I wasn't 100% or any other racers out there at Phoenix.
No, it's exactly right.
But as soon as he took himself out of contention, you saw some good stories like Kevin Harvick there at the front of the pack and Kyle Busch, who almost became the first non-chaser to win a race in almost 2 full seasons. So there's some other, and this is a good week then to go for some of those dark horse picks or some of those guys that are not at the front of the pack every week. Because you have someone like Eric Almirola finishing in the top 5 2 years ago in the one-off rider and the part-time ride with Richard Petty Motorsports. You had Jeff Burton finishing in the top 10 last year. He was on a bit of a roll, but it still was out of the ordinary. Not his norm at the moment anyway. So you've got a good chance to pick up some dark horses this week.
Who else, real briefly, Dan, do you like on your Yahoo game? We got about a minute and a half, I think, here to go.
Well, the lead driver is going to be Martin Truex Jr. Since he's been racing full-time, his worst finish is an 11th. He finished second in his first race and third last year. So if you kept a pick back, and I did last week, I took him off my roster at the last minute just so that I could start him here at Homestead. And that worked out for me. If you have a pick left, Martin Truex Jr. is a must-have. Down in C, you've got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in his last ride, first ride before next year. So you've got a Group C driver in a Group B or Group A car, and I think he's good for a top 15. He may even be good for a top 10 if the cautions fall the right way.
All right, well, he is Dan Beaver, and you can follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Race and read his fantasy racing articles at yahoosports.com and NASCAR.com. And read or listen to a highlight of this interview at onpitroad.com and our Facebook page in the next several days. Dan, thanks again for your time tonight and for everything you did this year for us. And I know all your just NASCAR fantasy fans appreciate what you do. Your analysis is so in-depth. Whenever I read it, like, man, that's a lot of work.
It really makes us realize how lame we are.
You would really think that some of it would sink in, but it doesn't. Thanks again, and maybe if you have some time, since we don't have a race to preview next week, we may give you a call and see if you want to kind of recap the season and look forward to 2013.
Sounds good, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll be around next year, so I look forward to picking back up where we left off at Daytona.
All right, man. He's Dan Beaver.
Thanks, Dan.